Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our weekly live stream. I've been out of the office doing these from my back porch for a couple weeks, but now everything's back and up and running, and there's a lot going on this week, as always, as we're kind of in this countdown. Not really count, I guess, because we don't know when it's going to start, but there's widespread expectation that Justin Trudeau will be calling an election at some point, and he doesn't need to, frankly, but certainly we will be ready. And there are many important issues on the table that we need to talk about. I wanted to start off here by talking about something that it hasn't made the news as much as it should, but it's a big issue, and it shows another one of these cases that show complete liberal disregard for the rule of law, but it's also an important economic taxation issue for many families. So. In this parliament, a substantial number of private members' bills from Conservative members have been able to move forward and actually pass into law. In some cases, these were bills that were able to get support from all parties. In some cases, we were able to have the opposition parties working together to pass a bill that actually the government opposed. And that can happen in a minority parliament, obviously, right? A majority of the seats are held by parties that do not include the government. So if you have Conservative, NDP, and Bloc working together, which it does happen on certain things, you can get a bill passed, even if the Liberals oppose it, and then if it passes Senate, it becomes law. So I was very pleased to see some of the excellent work done by some of my Conservative colleagues to get various private members' bills passed, and notwithstanding the general negative direction of the Liberal government, we were able to get some things done even over their objections in the context of the Parliament as it has existed. Now, one of those bills that passed was a bill from a Manitoba Conservative MP, Larry Maguire. The bill amends the income tax to provide that that when a farm or a fishing corporation is passed on to a family member to prevent individuals from having to pay tax associated with that. So in the past, and as it currently exists under the Income Tax Act, at that point of transition, maybe passing on a farm from one generation to the next, there would be significant taxes that would have to be paid. And this bill, Bill S-208, sought to address this unfairness. Well, Liberals opposed that bill. The bill passed anyways. Great news for farm families, especially for other families involved in small business, families involved in fisheries, that they have now a greater opportunity to pass the family business onto the next generation without the government taking away so much in tax that effectively it becomes very difficult for the next generation to continue that business. The bill passes, and the Liberal government says, okay, the bill has passed, but we're not going to implement this bill until next year. We just decided that the changes in this bill don't take effect until next year. Now, this is totally wrong in law. When a bill passes, it becomes law right away, unless the bill says something otherwise. So we've had cases, for instance, we talked about some of the provisions in Bill C7, the government's euthanasia bill, where the legislation says that a particular clause exists in law until it expires in 2 years. There are some cases of legislation that passes that does not take effect until the government declares it to have taken effect, but that has to be written clearly in the law. Once the law has been changed, the law is the law, and there has to be a separation between the law and the government. The government has to abide by law. That's what it means to live in a rule of law society. The government can't do whatever it wants. The government is constrained and has to follow laws that are put forward and passed by Parliament. So we have in this case a bill that was passed by Parliament that effectively reduces taxes for farm families, other small business owners. And the Liberals are saying, well, too bad, we're actually not going to bring in the changes that were demanded by Parliament until next year. Now, it may be that the Liberals, who clearly don't want to bring in these changes at all, they voted against the bill, that they hope they can get a majority government in a upcoming election and then just repeal these provisions. And that would be perhaps what they have in mind. But in any event, this is, again, a violation of law. And we're seeing consistently across the board, the Liberals have a total lack of respect for the rule of law. We see it in the way they behave in the SNC-Lavalin scandal and other scandals that have taken place. We see it in terms of just their refusal to confront violent, lawless, so-called protesting. And we see it again here. The Parliament passes a law, and they say, "Well, we're not gonna consider it to have passed until next year." So wherever you live in the country, contact your member of Parliament, talk to them about this bill, important private members bill S208, and emphasize just the importance of actually following the law and moving this bill forward. Certainly, we are going to be using every tool at our disposal to support small businesses and fight for them against these undemocratic actions. I suspect there will be court challenges around this as well, but there's a lot of uncertainty for families for the time being. An urgent issue happening internationally, but with a deep connection to Canada, that I wanted to talk to you about, and again encourage folks who are following in other ridings to be talking to their MPs about, is the situation of Afghan interpreters and support staff. So as many of you will know, Canada participated in a NATO-led mission to Afghanistan. Canadian soldiers fought and died, in many cases combating the Taliban, trying to improve the situation for the Afghan people. Sadly, since the decision by the United States under President Biden to withdraw American forces, we are seeing a significant increase in the activity of the Taliban, various forms of violence and efforts by the Taliban to extend their influence. And frankly, it's a very challenging situation. A lot of great work was done by Canadians and others to fight the Taliban. Now we're in a situation where those troops are being withdrawn and the Taliban are doing their best to make gains. The one thing we need to do, though, is honor our commitment to interpreters and others who served with Canadian Armed Forces working in Afghanistan. And this has been a key priority that veterans have been speaking out about, because veterans who served in Afghanistan, of course, they worked with some of these staff members, these interpreters who were Afghan people who worked with and supported Canadian forces, really taking great risks, acknowledging that they could be subject to attacks or other forms of retaliation by the Taliban. They nonetheless chose to honorably work and sacrifice alongside Canadian soldiers. Now, as Taliban makes gains, these people who worked with Canadians are in a very vulnerable situation. They are at risk of violence and even torture and killings by the Taliban as the risk increases of further Taliban advances. So conservatives, veterans, many others have been calling on the government of Canada to support and protect these interpreters, give them an opportunity to come to Canada. And we've been just calling for this over and over again, and the Liberals have been so behind the eight ball. And if we miss this moment, folks, if we miss this moment, we're going to have abandoned people who fought alongside us, and that's just such an un-Canadian thing to do. We sought the help and support of these communities. We need to of these individuals. We need to stand beside them. So again, an important issue, important for our veterans, important for our national honor, important for the lives and well-being of these Afghan people who stood with and supported and worked with Canada. While we're talking about things happening internationally, let's talk a bit about the protests in Cuba. So, a few years ago, Fidel Castro, longtime, let's say, jailer of Cubans, longtime autocratic, violent communist leader, died. And Justin Trudeau bizarrely presented this kind of fawning eulogy, and many other figures on the left have this seems to be this admiration even for what the Cuban regime has done. It's consistent with what Justin Trudeau has said about the Chinese Communist Party, for instance, his admiration for the basic dictatorship they have in China. Well, they have a basic dictatorship in Cuba as well, sadly. And now, incredibly, we see Cuban people taking to the streets, protesting, demanding greater protection of their rights, seeking the advancement of justice, and it's important for us to recognize the bravery of the Cuban people in their fight, and to stand with them. And that's why Conservatives have made very strong statements expressing our solidarity with the Cuban people and calling on the government of Canada to do the same. But Justin Trudeau has again been very muted in his response to these events. We are again seeing his admiration for basic dictatorships on full display. For those who remember, by the way, when Trudeau made those comments at the time of Fidel Castro's death, there was a whole internationally this hashtag Trudeau eulogies about how eulogies for objectively very bad people that were trying to reframe them in a positive light. That's what he was doing. I mean, I remember Stéphane Dion, who was at the time the Foreign Affairs Minister, giving a speech in the House of Commons in which he said Cuba has one of the lowest crime rates in North America, as if we should be taking at face value the crime statistics coming out of an ultra-authoritarian communist country, and somehow praising them for low levels of crime when we know the horrific and violent way that people are treated in that country. It's just bizarre, the blind spot that the Liberal Party of Canada has for these far left violent authoritarian regimes like Cuba. Someone would not agree that China is far left, and I mean you might say there's sort of elements of far right and far left at the same time happening with the Chinese Communist Party. But in any event, you see the Canadian Liberal Party in various stages. It was evident under Pierre Elliott Trudeau during the Cold War. It's evident now with China, with Cuba, the lack of willingness to call out these kind of violent regimes. So Conservatives are continuing to call on Justin Trudeau to make a strong statement of solidarity with the Cuban people, and Conservatives will continue to express our support and solidarity with the Cuban people as well. It always just amazes and impresses me to see the courage of people who are protesting and speaking out in countries where they could lose their lives for doing that. And we've seen many instances of this. I recall a couple of years ago just watching the unfolding protest movement in Sudan that led to overthrowing a dictator who had been in place for 30 years, and now the ongoing transition efforts of that country. And this just underlines that that people everywhere, they want freedom, they want rule of law, they want their human rights protected, they want democracy. And we should have a principled foreign policy which stands with people bravely seeking their freedom and does not stand with their oppressors and their jailers. That's what we need, again, for Canada, is a principled foreign policy. There's one more issue that I wanted to update you on. It's almost not news anymore, right? It's another day, another Liberal scandal, another ethics commissioner investigation. Coming back to, we talked at the beginning about the bill S208 and lack of respect for rule of law. We have another Liberal scandal here, and this is the data sciences scandal. It's hard to keep track of all these scandals, right? The We Charity scandal, the SC-Lavalin scandal, the illegal vacation scandal. But this one is, the ethics commissioner has confirmed that he is launching an initial investigation into the data sciences scandal. And what this one is all Liberal MPs, almost all, are using taxpayer dollars through their offices to pay for maintenance and licensing of software from Data Sciences and NGP VAN. Now, Data Sciences is a behavioral analytics company run by Tom Pitfield, who is a childhood friend of Justin Trudeau, and he's also had senior positions in Liberal campaigns. And the NGP VAN is the company that the Liberal Party of Canada also licenses to run their political database, Liberal List. So you have a whole bunch of taxpayers' dollars being directed from almost all Liberal MPs' offices to these companies that have a very cozy relationship with and also do political work for the Liberal Party. Now, we tried to precipitate an investigation of this at the Ethics Committee, and Liberals blocked that investigation. We see regular attempts by Liberals to block or filibuster investigations into their ethical conduct. It's not a coincidence that virtually all Liberal offices are part of this. And so this again just underlines the continuing too many to count scandals of this government. And We need to do more than just talk about scandals. I think Canadians value and prioritize ethics in government, and we need to reform our laws, strengthen accountability, clean up government, and give people the support that they deserve. A lot of these scandals, accumulated. There's a lot of money that's just wasted when the government is trying to provide resources to companies that they have close relationships with, instead of thinking about how they can maximize the benefit that they're providing to Canadians. So, a few big issues. The government is illegally keeping taxes high, even when Parliament ordered them to go down. We are continuing to fight for Afghan interpreters, and really for the honor of Canada, that we would stand with those that stood with us in Afghanistan, and supporting and standing in solidarity with the Cuban people in their fight for freedom and justice. And of course, we continue to challenge the government on their various ethics scandals. It's been great chatting with you again today. We will be back again in 7 days, as we always are, with weekly live updates every week at 1 p.m. on Friday. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great week.